What's up, guys? And welcome back to another episode of the Magic Hour. I'm Curtis.
I'm Paul.
And today we are discussing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
And we're in the old studio.
We're back to the old setup. And you used this one with some of your other guests, right?
Yeah. We got a little bit of different format. We got the coffee set. We got this set. I felt like when you're doing a Quentin Tarantino movie, he has said in interviews he's only going to do 10 movies. So you got to give it the best cinematic treatment you can give it. So I feel like this set is more appropriate for, particularly this movie.
And this was number 7, right?
No, this is 9.
9, okay.
So theoretically, he only has one movie
One
left,
more movie
and that's going to be a Star Trek movie. Did you hear about that?
I did hear something about a Star Trek movie.
A rated R Star Trek movie with probably flamethrowers instead of phasers.
So it's flamethrowers to fry. But yeah, man, this was a Quentin Tarantino movie without a doubt.
Now, what does that mean?
Well, he likes to use a lot of the same actors that he's worked with in the past.
Okay.
And this thing was full of actors he's worked with in the past. I mean,
let me tell you, it just wasn't actors he's worked with. He had every son and daughter of an actor in Hollywood in this movie. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
I looked through the cast thoroughly. Did you know that Uma Thurman's daughter was in this movie?
No, who did she play?
You know the girl. This might be too early for this. You know the girl that doesn't go into the house and drives off with the car.
Yeah. Okay.
That is Uma Thurman's daughter with Ethan Hawke.
Oh, okay.
She was in Stranger Things. It's the same girl that was with Steve in Stranger Things. The girl in the Chippehoy restaurant.
Right. Yeah.
That's the same.
Oh, yeah.
That was the same girl.
Okay.
Because I saw her face when I was watching the movie. I was like, I've seen her. Where have I seen her? And I was like, oh, that's that girl in Stranger Things. And I looked her up. If you look at her face, she does look like Uma Thurman. There's a picture of her and Uma Thurman. I'll put it up. But there's a picture of her and Uma Thurman at a premiere somewhere. Their faces are just alike.
Well,
it looks nothing like Ethan Hawke though.
You know,
but she was in the movie. Bruce Willis's daughter was in the movie. I don't know what. I don't remember seeing her.
I think she was one of the hippies.
Yeah, most of them played hippies. Dakota Fanning was in the movie.
Yep, she played a hippie too. Dakota Fanning played one of the main hippies.
Yeah, was she the red?
She was red.
I didn't even recognize her.
I thought that was her.
Until later, when I was doing research for the movie.
Yeah. So,
but there
was in line with the way that we usually do these things.
Oh, another one. I got them written down here. That's why I just wanted. Harley Quinn Smith.
Harley Quinn Smith.
That's Kevin Smith's daughter. She was in the movie.
Of course, that's her name. Kevin Smith.
Harley Quinn Smith.
Harley Quinn Smith. Oh, poor thing.
Yeah, so man, he's gonna be able to pull some favors out of this movie. He's put everybody in Hollywood, pretty much their children, in the movie.
Do you think he'll stop at 10?
No.
There's no way. He's too young. He's too young and too
He
talented.
loves movies too much. That's the thing about this movie. This movie is a movie about movies. Because just about every one of his movies has some kind of aside about movies and how they're made. Either the characters love movies, or it's like in Inglourious Bastards. Even the main character was I forget the girl's name, but she owned a theater. Her grandmother or somebody owned the theater, and the whole climax of that movie takes place
in the theater.
Within the theater. So you can tell just by looking at this movie that.
And they're always making movie references in his movies.
Yeah.
You know, they're always
like
referring to scenes in movies or characters in movies.
And that's all Quentin Tarantino. I think he's one of those people who he just loves that golden age of Hollywood. And you can see his love of that bygone era in this film because there's all these shots in the movie. That's one thing I really enjoyed about it. There's all these shots of old Los Angeles because they spent.
I don't know how they did a lot of that. I guess it had to have been.
No, it was all. There was no computer generated.
Really?
He doesn't like computer generated stuff. But there was a shot they did of the highway, and all the cars on the highway were from that period.
That's exact. I had that thought during the movie. I was like, they did a panning shot over like a boulevard. And it had all these like old 1960 neon signs of the different brands and stuff that went way back, you know.
Now, some of it might have been CGI.
And I was just wondering, I was like,
but it didn't look like CGI.
No, it didn't. It was very good.
I really don't think he likes too much CGI in his movies. But they spent $95 million on the movie, so they had the budget to do it. But that highway scene, They had to shut the highway down to do that scene.
I'm sure they did. I mean, in Hollywood, it's shutting a highway down is not hard. You know.
So it was a gorgeous. That's the one thing I did like about it. It was a gorgeous film. But we're getting back to what is a Quentin Tarantino movie. One of the things a Quentin Tarantino movie is long.
Yes. And
this movie was 2 hours and 41 minutes long.
And it didn't need to be. I mean, in my opinion, but I guess we can get into that later because we'll talk about the story and everything, and then I'm going to tell you what I thought about the movie, and then you can give your opinion on it as well. Okay. But just based on how we've done this in the past. Okay. So, just a quick synopsis of the movie is it's basically following this character named Rick Dalton, who, by the way, is based off of Burt Reynolds. I read an article about it, and the same type of things happened where this character was in what was it called? Bounty Law.
Yeah,
Bounty Law, and he was on this series played by Leonardo Dicaprio, and he didn't like the way they were taking his character. And so he left.
What was the show that Burt was on?
Burt was called Steamboat, I think.
Okay.
It was the same period of time.
All right.
As a matter of fact, I know this is a fact because Burt Reynolds was set to do a cameo in this movie, right. And play the character that runs the old
the Span movie ranch.
Yeah, movie ranch. And as everybody, if you've seen it, you know who played it in his place.
Bruce Dern.
Bruce Dern played it because Burt Reynolds died before he could shoot his
Bruce
scenes.
Dern was in the Hateful Eight.
Yeah, Bruce Dern was in the Hateful Eight. Yeah. Yep. Again, recurring characters.
Recurring characters. That's Quentin loves that.
I even saw Tim Roth's name on the credits, but I didn't see him in the movie. But it said Tim Roth, and then it said, in parentheses, it said cut. So whatever that means.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it was just an ode to him or something.
You know, one person that wasn't in the movie, I think this was the first, Samuel Jackson.
You're right.
He
must have been busy with 15 other movies he's making.
But he's always been in every, even the period films, even that Inglourious Basterds film, he was like the narrator. Even if he wasn't visually on screen, he's been in every. Is there a movie where he hasn't been in a?
Well, he wasn't in Dusk Till Dawn.
No, that was Robert Rodriguez.
Oh,
that was written by Quentin Tarantino, directed by Robert.
But that's
Rodriguez.
not a Tarantino film,
right?
But what was the one with Mr. Black and Mr. Blue, and what was that one called?
Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs.
The first one.
He wasn't in that one.
No, he wasn't in that one.
But then you get to Pulp Fiction, which is his most iconic role, I think.
Well, you know, he tried to be Samuel Jackson auditioned for Reservoir Dogs, and the black guy in the movie that plays the cop with Tim Roth, he got the part that Samuel Jackson was going for.
Oh.
And Quentin, if I heard Samuel Jackson do an interview about that, and he said Quentin, like after he saw Reservoir Dogs, Quentin's like, "How you like the guy that got your part?"
Oh, that's hardcore.
So he was like, when he went to audition for Pulp Fiction, he said he made sure he was gonna knock out
He
Walker.
killed it,
But
yeah.
he went to the audition and didn't do well. Quentin was like, he was like, no, don't give me another shot. And eventually, I guess he did it well enough where Quentin chose him.
Could you imagine having that kind of power where you have somebody like Samuel Jackson having to work for a role?
Oh, he made Samuel Jackson was nobody before. He had been in some Spike Lee movies, but he wasn't a big name. That movie made his
Pulp
career.
Pulp Fiction made him, yeah. Well, so getting back to the synopsis. So Rick Dalton has this stunt double played by Brad Pitt. And what was his name again?
His name was Cliff Booth.
Cliff, yeah. Cliff Booth was Brad Pitt's character. And they were best friends.
They're not really friends. He works for Rick Dalton because Rick Dalton had a couple DUIs and can't drive himself.
Yeah, but I mean, I think they were friends.
They were friends ultimately, but what happened? Well, this is the relationship they had. Cliff, the character that Brad Pitt played, he killed his wife.
And they never really confirmed or denied it.
Yeah, he got away with it. They never explain why he got away with it. They never show you. They have a flashback of him with his wife. His wife is really like being a bitch.
Right.
And they have a flashback, but he's holding like a dart
Spear
gun.
gun.
Yeah. And you never actually see him do the act. You don't even know if he killed her on the boat. So they never really explained.
It was implied.
Yeah, but he's kind of like
confirmed.
He's kind of got a reputation like OJ in Hollywood, so he can't get any work. So he ends up working for Rick Dalton because he was his stunt man on Bounty Law.
Yeah, on Bounty Law, yeah.
But you know, since he killed his wife, he can't get work. So he pretty much that's the only work he can get as his driver.
But that's what I'm saying.
But they become friends over
Leonardo
time,
or Rick looks out for him and tries to get him work and stuff. So if he didn't like him, he wouldn't put his neck out for him. But anyway, so there's a whole bunch of driving cars fast. There's a whole bunch of driving cars in this.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of driving cars in this. And a whole bunch of smoking cigarettes in this.
Oh my God, the cigarette smoking inside.
Oh, they were smoking so many cigarettes.
Smoking on planes, smoking everywhere.
Oh, it was crazy. But I think that's the way 60s Hollywood was.
Oh, it was.
But
definitely.
So
a lot of drinking too.
So Rick's character at this point is having a hard time. He left the show, the series that he was on, to go and try and start a movie career, which didn't pan out.
Yep.
And so now what he's having to do to survive is he's guest starring on anything he can get a role in. Right. The problem with that is that these roles, he's being cast as the bad guy. And so enter Al Pacino's character. Who I'm not really sure what his job was. He was
like an agent.
Yeah, agent for the Italian film industry.
I think he was just an agent, but he told Rick that, look, they're casting you as these heavies because you're iconic, and they want their hero in whatever show you're participating in. They want elevate their hero by having him punch you out, but you're losing favor in Hollywood because that's all they're going to hire. They realize you're a fading star.
Yeah, it's a philosophical thing where Hollywood wants to bring up this young new artist,
right,
an actor, and the best way to do that is by destroying this older, more established actor
Right.
And so they can rise up.
And that's the only roles they're giving him. So he realizes that he's in trouble, that his career is in trouble.
Yeah, right there's the scene where they all meet in the bar. So what happens is he's still got all these responsibilities, but in the meantime, you know, in Quentin Tarantino style, he starts telling story B and story C from a different perspective, which one of the stories was Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski were making a movie.
We got to mention the fact that Rick Dalton lives right next door to Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski.
Right. And so that he starts telling this story about Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski. And then he starts telling this story about these hippies and this guy named Charlie that all these hippies think are just great. Mm-hmm. And as they drive in cars and smoke cigarettes through this 3-hour movie, it all comes into fruition where they all three of these stories match. Again, in Quentin Tarantino style, you see if you know the story of Charles Manson and what happened with Sharon Tate and a couple of other people in Hollywood where he sent his goons out to kill them, you see this being set up for this to take place. Yeah. But what Quentin does better than anybody is he creates an alternate reality.
Well, see, and this is the thing about the way he does it. He did this in The Glorious Bastards, and it's been done before. There's been movies where they've had like historical fiction. Usually, they'll make up a character who was kind of like a witness to some kind of historical event. It was kind of like a secondary character in the background, but that character doesn't have enough interaction with the main event to actually change it. So, but you see in Inglourious Basterds, he actually has this alternate timeline that he changes history pretty much by having spoilers. If you haven't seen Inglourious Basterds, it's really your fault by this point.
Shame on you.
But he has Hitler assassinated. And in fact, I'm glad you brought it up because I have a clip from an interview that Quentin did where he explains what he's doing when he does this.
We'll roll that
let me roll that
footage
really quick, and then we can go back to the discussion.
If one wants to think of this movie as a fairy tale or a fantasia, you're welcome to. Feel free. But that's not really exactly where I'm coming from on it. Where I'm coming from is this. In the course of my story, my characters change the course of the war. Now, that didn't happen because my characters didn't exist. But if they had have existed, everything that happens is fairly plausible. 99999! Oh, yes. If there had been a Frederick Zoller who did what he did at that time in the war, I'm sure Goebbels would have made a movie about him, the way America made a movie about Audie Murphy. And if Frederick Zoller looked like Daniel Bruhl and was as charming, then he could have been cast as the lead, and then they could very well have had a big premiere, and so on and so on and so on.
So basically what he's saying here is he sees history in a certain, history happened, but in his scenarios, he looks at it as this. Look, yes, I know history happened this way, but what if this character had been living next to the Polanskis? And what if on that fateful night, that character had some kind of influence? Could we have been a different timeline?
Yeah, because even though Rick Dalton's character is based on somebody who was actually there, Cliff's character, I mean, who knows if Burt Reynolds had stuntman sidekick that was running around with him. I doubt it. However, entering or creating that character and putting him in that situation changed the course of what did happen in history. And by the way, that end scene was pretty much made it worth it to me to sit there for 3 hours.
Well, a lot of me, and let's go into some of the things we didn't like. You were right. I think you before we start the show, you said something about it being kind of going off track, meandering a little bit. And a lot of that, though, was them setting up Cliff as just this badass. Because
that was a long time to set him up as a badass.
They had him fight Bruce Lee. He actually kind of kicked, spoilers, he kind of kicked Bruce. I mean, well, the fight wasn't resolved because it got ended pretty quickly, but he kind of kicked Bruce Lee's ass for a little bit.
Yeah, that was a good scene. That part where they fought each other.
So they did all these things to set him up as his bad. When he goes to that ranch, the Span Ranch, I was I did not know what was going to happen because
I thought she was going to kill him.
Well, see, that's the thing about Quentin Tarantino. He's not above killing his character. He will kill. He killed what? In Pulp Fiction, he killed John Travolta, like halfway through the movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, he brought him back later because he switched everything around in that timeline, but still, he kills his main characters all the time. So I'm sitting there watching this scene, knowing that he kills characters. I'm like, is there going to be a particular reason he kills them though in this scene? And it just that scene just went on and on and on. I was like, oh my God, he goes further and further. But he's such a badass that he's not scared of these hippies. He's a war. You know, they kind of hinted that he was in either. I guess he was in
Korea.
It was Korea.
Yeah.
So he's a war veteran. There's a bunch of scenes where he's just kicking people's ass. This guy, you know, we already know he killed his wife.
No, I think it was Vietnam. I think it was Vietnam.
Was it Vietnam?
Like early Vietnam.
Okay. So we know he can handle himself with these hippies, but at the same time, this is the Manson family.
And there was a crap ton of them.
Yeah. And the thing I liked about it, I went and did some research about that ranch. That ranch actually existed.
Oh, I know. I saw a documentary on it. There were bodies buried on that ranch.
Yeah. And that guy, the owner of the ranch, that because you the whole time you're thinking, is this guy really even alive? And you're thinking they're lying about it, but the whole scenario that they described, him being blind, the women sleeping with him, that all actually happened, which I was impressed by. I didn't know about that. I actually saw a TV movie about the Manson family, and I don't think that got explained. But they were living on that ranch with that guy's permission, and they were under Charles Manson's orders. They were having sex with the guy and like taking care of him. So, but I didn't, not knowing that, I thought that Cliff was walking into some kind of trap where he's gonna get killed, and that was a tense scene. That's one thing Quentin does very well. He has a bunch of scenes throughout all his movies like that, particularly in Glorious Bastards, where you got those scenes where there was that scene in the basement.
Oh yeah, where they were all playing the drinking game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
then the dude used the wrong figure of speech.
Yeah.
And no, he held up three fingers instead of 3 fingers, and that's English. And apparently that's German.
Right. So, and then there was another scene in that same movie, the opening scene where Hans Lander or whatever, the Jew hunter, he goes to that farmhouse and they show you the Jews under the floorboards. Yep. And then they cut back to him. He's just talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. You're like, please, something just go ahead and happen, because they're just building that tension up. steadily until it just takes off. So there was a lot. Man, that scene was so intense. I just could. Wow.
Well, that's why he's who he is.
But I did feel like there were some scenes, like particularly that scene with Sharon Tate when she's going to the movie theater. And I was like, there was a couple scenes.
I didn't quite understand that myself.
I was like, why are they showing us this?
Yeah, what are they
She goes up to the ticket booth and talks to the woman in the ticket booth. Oh, you know I'm in this movie. And then she goes get her manager. Oh, yeah, I'm in this movie. I'm like, why do we need to see that? What was that setting up?
I guess.
I mean, they could have cut all that out and just showed her in the theater for a few seconds watching her own movie. I think he was trying to establish that this is an innocent time in Hollywood. Or maybe a lot of people feel this way, that the Charles Manson murders ended this golden period in Hollywood because you had a high-profile actress get murdered. You know, heir to the Folger?
Yeah, Folgers.
She got killed. A bunch of people got killed by the Manson family. He had connections with the Beach Boys. So it just ended this idealistic period that had been built in Hollywood in the 60s. And I think her going to the movie theater was his way of saying, look at this innocence we lost, where you could go into a theater and watch yourself. You know, today you couldn't do that. Somebody like Sharon Tate going to a movie theater like that,
it wouldn't happen.
She'd be mobbed. It'd be on Twitter within 2 minutes, and everybody would know it. You know, there'd be paparazzi probably outside waiting or in the theater with her. So I think that was the whole purpose of that scene.
Well,
so
I think that this was one reason I enjoy doing these reviews with you is it gives me the opportunity to not just go and watch the movie and have that experience, but then to step back from it, you know, and be critical. And I see a lot more of what he was trying to do now, you know, in the way he was telling the story. There's still too much driving around in cars and too many smoking cigarettes. Yeah. But, you know, he had to establish a connection between all three of these groups of people for the final scenes, which that's pretty awesome because Cliff was tripping on acid.
Well, see here. Okay, here's the thing about that. One of the things I don't like about Quentin Tarantino, sometimes his sensibilities as a director are kind of juvenile. And like when I went to film school, everybody worshipped, everybody wanted to be the next Quentin Tarantino. And I was one of the only people who was like, I like half of his movies. It's like, I like Pulp Fiction, I like Reservoir Dogs, I like Django, really like Django. And I kind of like Inglourious Bastards. There's a lot of things I don't like about Inglourious Bastards, but overall I like it. So it was like maybe 4 movies. The other movies, I can't stand Kill Bill because that's his most juvenile. I felt it was his most juvenile.
And that's the only one he did more than one of, too.
Yeah, it was just a cartoon. It was like watching a cartoon. I mean,
it really was.
You had that scene where, and then there was just some insensitive stuff I just can't reconcile. Like that scene where Uma Thurman kills Vivica Fox in front of her daughter. And it was played kind of for laughs, you know, because you see the school bus pulling up and they're in there trying to kill each other. And, you know, I think people laughed in the theater when I was watching that. I was just like, what in the world was that? So I'm not one of those people who worships Quentin Tarantino, but at the same time, there was a certain, okay, we're going to really spoil it at this point. So if you haven't watched the movie, I seriously recommend you go ahead and shut it out now. Come back, because I'm going to spoil the most pivotal moment in the movie. One of the things I like about Inglourious Basterds is the fact that you see Hitler gets just
God.
mowed down. I mean, not just killed, but just destroyed.
He gets got.
There was something cathartic about it, and he plays. One of the reasons this movie works was because he used that teenage sensibility that he has sometimes, and I actually want to curse, but I'm not going to curse. He freaking murders the Manson family. Brad Pitt character freaking murders them. I mean, brutally murders. I mean, and I think the redhead was the one that killed Sharon Tate in real life. Stabbed a pregnant woman. And I've seen a lot of feminists online complain about this scene because Brad Pitt freaking slams her head. I think he slams her head into like the mantle of the fireplace at one point.
And caves it in. And
and one of the complaints online was that, on one hand, it's nice to see. That would have been a nice ending for the man. Knowing what they did, in hindsight, it would have been really nice to see them get their comeuppance. But the complaint I've read online from feminist websites, of course, is that he couldn't have known they were that bad as people, and that's true.
He had a feeling about them when he was out at that ranch.
He was at the ranch.
And so
and then
once it clicked in his acid-addled brain who they were, and they're standing there with knives and guns, he would just like... and this sticks the dog... when the dog grabs dude by the junk. Oh, my goodness.
And then, of course, this is the thing, kind of what I like about Quentin Tarantino. It's juvenile, but I like it. If you see a special weapon in a movie early on, you know it's going to come back. You see a flamethrower early in the movie.
Yeah, so Rick Dalton.
One of the Manson family members goes crashing through the window. Because Rick Dalton doesn't even know what's going on. They're in there. Cliff is in there fighting all three of them. He throws a can of dog food at one of the girls and like breaks her nose.
Caves her face in with it.
And she goes crazy and just jumps out through a window or a door.
After the dog eats on her for a minute.
Yeah. And because Rick Dalton is out in the pool and he's got the stereo on. He can't, he's like memorizing his lines for the next day. And he can't hear what's going on until she crashes through and lands in the pool. And she's screaming and shooting a gun in the air. And he runs into the shed. And you knew the moment he ran that shed what he was going for. Because he kept this flamethrower from a movie, a Nazi movie he did early in his
Which was
career.
an ode to Inglourious Basterds.
Yeah, where he roasted all these German officers alive. He pulls out that flamethrower and just sets that
he likes
Manson
her.
woman on fire, and everybody was cheering. In my theater, people were cheering. They were like, "Yeah!" But at the same time, I was like, I love that because the Manson family got what was coming to them in a way that could have never happened in real life. But at the same time, how juvenile was that scene? And from start to finish,
and the lack of action through the first 2.5 hours of movie.
Yeah.
Dadgum if they didn't make up for it in the last 30 minutes.
I mean, you don't even think about the rest. I've been thinking about that last scene since I watched it.
I know.
Since I got home last night. That's all I've been thinking about.
I'm telling you, if it wouldn't have been, I told you this earlier, if it wouldn't have been for that last scene, I wouldn't have liked this movie.
Yeah.
Because
but you know he was building toward that. I knew there was going to be some kind of...
I just didn't know how he was... I knew something was up. I knew
going in that I knew what he had done with Glorious Bastards. When I saw in the trailers all this stuff with the Manson family, I said he's going to have some kind of climax when the Manson family go and kills Sharon Tate, and he's going to have some kind of thing where he... And see, the closer we got to that event, you know, they had that scene where Cliff goes to walk his dog. And I'm thinking, okay, so they're going to go into Sharon Tate's estate, and he's going to come back from walking the dog, and and intervene somehow.
Yeah,
I knew something was going to happen. What actually happens is Rick Dalton goes out there because he's pissed that they're sitting in his private drive, and he curses them out. So they say, "Hey, that asshole who taught us to kill when we were younger. Let's get him instead." They go instead of going to Sharon Tate's house, they choose his house.
They go to Rick Dalton's house,
right?
When he wasn't even in there. He was in the pool.
He was in the
with
pool.
Headphones on.
So
and then enter Cliff tripping balls on acid.
He smoked a cigarette dipped in LSD, so he's tripping already.
And he was just starting to get off on it when they came in the house, and he's like,
"Are y'all even real?
Is this real?" Yeah. And then he starts laughing.
The guy points the gun at him. He's not scared. You think it's funny. He's like, "I'm about to kill these people."
Yeah,
really.
They have no idea what they just walked into.
And he just, oh my God, that's just such
him and his now don't forget that dog now, because the dog was pivotal.
You know the dog's name, Brandy.
Brandy, and it was a girl, yeah. And Brandy kicked some ass, buddy. Kicked more than ass.
Yeah, but I felt like they could have cut maybe. So let's get to the complaints. It was a lot of meandering, just from the fact I just think he got all this money for this film. He says, "I'm going to show this audience what Hollywood used to be back in the day. We're going to show them the restaurants."
This was personal for him.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I'm going to show. Look at this scene with the.
That was silly.
In the bar.
That was a silly scene, right? Yeah.
Hey, I'm just going to shoot. He said, "I got all this freaking money. I'm just going to." He has the same DP he's been working with, Robert Richardson, who's just a wonderful cinematographer. I'm just gonna show it the way it was, man. The lights, the cameras, all the studios, the bars, the restaurants, the houses, everything. I'm gonna show it the way it really was. And a lot of the shots in the movie was just lingering on all that old Hollywood, because I'm sure Hollywood. I lived in Los Angeles, and it's a big ghetto now.
Yeah, it was shiny and bright and
just beautiful,
ostentatious.
You get the feeling he wish he could have been at his prime back then.
I don't know if he would have been as well received then as he is now, because he likes to shock people.
Yeah, but one thing. I think he could have been one of those Western directors like John Ford or somebody.
Yeah, that's true, because look at the Hateful Eight.
Yeah, he loves Westerns.
Yeah, the Hateful Eight.
This whole movie was about.
Did you like it? Because you didn't mention it earlier.
I didn't really like it.
I like that one.
It was all right. But like I said, I like about half of his movies.
Well, I'd say be prepared. Hang on till the last 30 minutes if you get bored with it. Because there was a time, I'm going to be completely honest, there was a time in the movie where I thought about getting up and leaving, but I knew I couldn't because we were doing this review. Because I was just like, are they seriously going to show him driving in the car again?
I wish he had done something more of like he was showing Rick Dalton what happened to his career. Because, see, what happens at the end of the film is he gets invited over to the Polanski's house. Which I thought that's another problem I had with it. You mean all this time he couldn't just go over there and visit with them? People had to die for him to be invited over. I thought that was kind of ludicrous.
He had to murder someone to go over there.
Right. They know who he is.
Remember when Sharon Tate said on the intercom, "Is everybody okay?"
Yeah.
Well, I know the hippies ain't.
Right. But did he really need that specifically to happen to be invited over there? So because what they're intimating at the end is that he had a career resurgence because he went over there and maybe he was cast in Polanski. So I thought during the credits they should have shown him Like instead of Jack Nicholson being in Chinatown, it was Rick Dalton. I think Chinatown came out in the 70s, didn't it?
I think so. So that would have worked.
That would have worked, but instead they had this Red Apple commercial. So that was a missed opportunity by Quentin.
Well, let me tell you, my whole theater was like, there were no young people in there. I didn't see any young people. Most of the people that were surrounding me were my age up to their 70s.
Okay.
How about your theater?
I think most of them were 30 and above.
Yeah, that's what I would say is 30 and above.
Yeah.
And up to 70s.
It didn't open really big. It got beat by Lion King. I mean, it opened to...
well, Quentin's movies have never been like break the box office movies.
I mean, Pulp Fiction did really well.
But it had gained momentum. It didn't like open strong.
His most successful film, though, was Django. It made $400 million. That was his best.
And I think it opened strong.
Yeah.
But on average, his movies don't open strong. Okay. But they have like staying power. You know, like they'll stay. Well,
they'll
in the
get
theater.
word of mouth. He'll get word of mouth just based on that last scene.
And again, that last scene, because it was satisfying in so many ways.
Yeah.
I almost felt bad because I was like cheering when he was smashing that girl's head.
Yeah, he's killing women, but he's killing two of the most deplorable women in history.
And it's a way of saying, here's me getting the opportunity to seek vengeance on the people who killed innocents. Right. You know? And I think that...
You know what would be interesting if he kept doing movies like this? He did a movie with OJ.
Oh.
That's also a Hollywood... Because OJ was in movies... That's also kind of a Hollywood. He could do a movie with some character.
Well, I guess if he sees that this
that knew OJ, and then OJ goes to kill his wife, and like the guy, he could do the same thing. He could do. Who's that guy that? That guy was actually innocent though. Who's was the Bonanza guy? Anyway, there's a bunch of Hollywood real crime stories.
What about the Black Dahlia? That story.
Yeah, anything.
You know?
He really there's a bunch of the alternate history thing he does, and he does a unique thing. Like I said, he does this thing where you feel this catharsis because somebody evil in history got offed.
Yeah,
in some horrible way. That's very satisfying.
Right. And it was satisfying because I finally had some emotion in this movie. You know? I laughed a few times, especially when Cliff and
Rick.
No, the Kung Fu guy.
Bruce Lee.
Golly, brain fart. I thought that was a fun one.
Yeah.
But there were so many scenes in it where I'm just like, come on, dude. You could have taken a whole hour out of this movie of driving.
You really on this driving thing?
Well, am I wrong, though?
No, you're not.
Was there a lot of driving?
There was a lot of driving.
And it was
like from the back seat, filming the people driving from the back seat of the car.
Or some like super expensive rig where they're following along in a gaffer truck next to it with a camera, you know, and they're cutting across lanes. And I was like, they spent a lot of time and money shooting that scene for what?
Yeah.
Just because those old cars were cool?
Yeah,
those old cars were cool. It was a beautiful Cadillac. But, I mean, man, again, that's my only complaint. The movie was too long. And it was too long because they put a bunch of scenes of them driving in it, and scenes that made no sense, like the Sharon Tate going to the movies. And I guess you could argue that the reason for that scene was to show that she was still an up-and-coming star, where she hadn't completely accepted it yet. And so she still was excited to go see herself on screen and see how people were reacting. But it really played no part in telling this story, other than, I guess, trying to create an emotional connection between the audience and her character. But then I'm like, well, then she's going to be brutally murdered.
Yeah, but she does get murdered, so it's like, yeah, well, that really served no purpose, ultimately.
Unless it was kind of a ode to what he felt her character was in real life, like saying, this is who she was and she never got a chance to let the world know.
Yeah.
So, again, like I said, it's fun doing this show because you get a chance to step back and look at it from a different perspective. But initially I was like, that was just a waste of time. There was a lot of wasted time in there. And then just the random narrating that would just come in out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was Kurt Russell, wasn't it?
Kurt Russell, but
Yeah,
which is another...
That kind of annoyed me. See, every once in a while he does something that's kind of like a fourth wall thing, breaking the fourth wall, and I don't really like it. It was a little bit too...
It was just so random. I mean,
yeah.
If that was happening throughout the movie...
Another thing I didn't like, he had a lot of... You notice the jump cuts?
Mm-hmm.
He had a bunch of jump cuts. I'm like, why is he doing jump cuts? He's just doing something to be doing it. Is there a reason? And usually they do a jump cut to compress. You see that a lot on YouTube. You see people, they're talking to the camera and it'll just jump. They're jumping because they cut out all the boring stuff and they didn't have, like us, they did not like us. They didn't have 3 cameras or whatever.
Right.
So they have to do jump cuts.
But he had $95 million.
Yeah, so what are you doing jump cuts for?
I think he was just trying to flex some artistic muscle there.
Yeah, he was just trying to do something different, but it's like, it's kind of like...
Trying too hard.
It's kind of like, oh, let's do a Picasso, but let's rearrange everything. And make
paint
it look,
by number.
Let's make it look realistic. Just Picasso. Why?
Well,
Because...
And another thing, if Rick Dalton would have cried one more time.
Yeah, there was a lot of scenes where we get it. He can't remember his lines because he drinks too much. We get it.
Or he's feeling insecure.
Yeah. Do we need 5 scenes of him being insecure? We get it.
And he's crying to an 8-year-old.
Right. He's having a crisis. He's basically having a midlife crisis. But do we need 10 scenes of him having midlife crisis stuff? We get it.
Yeah, and going back to the whole thing with his character being based off of Burt Reynolds, Burt Reynolds' story is very similar. It happened almost the same. But right after that period of time, he got deliverance.
Yeah.
And deliverance regenerated and his career. And then that's when he did Smoking the Bandit and, so on and so forth, and became a Hollywood legend.
Yeah.
So,
well, one of the things, another thing I'll just say, the last thing I'll say about one thing I like was Luke Perry.
Yeah.
Appeared, and that kind of shocked me. It was like he actually brought Luke Perry back to life, and for a moment. And I understand he obviously filmed this before he died, but that kind of got me a little bit emotionally.
It did too. It was like there was a lot of whispering going on when he came on.
Yeah,
a lot of people were discussing, oh, that's Luke Perry, and he just passed, and he had to pass away right after he filmed.
Yeah. He didn't look. I was looking at him real hard. He didn't look healthy to me.
He didn't.
I mean, for a 50-year-old man, he looked like he was in his 60s, man.
Well, I guess he was already sick at that point.
He had to be sick because he was looking. He had a nice little part. It didn't last long, but nice little cameo there.
This whole movie though did make me appreciate Leonardo DiCaprio that much more.
Oh, I've been all the movies he's done with Martin Scorsese.
No, I'm saying I've already had a high opinion of him.
Yeah.
But for him to be able to play a character who's playing characters who are playing characters, I mean, that is stretching your acting
range.
muscles. I mean, it was really, really impressive. But Rick Dalton as a person was kind of an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right. He's not that sympathetic. Do you really care whether he...
I mean, and if he was hollering hippies and you hippies and all,
yeah,
he was probably yelling other things too, you know.
Yeah.
But that was also in the 60s and it was a different time.
I didn't think about it. He's not... You really go watch this movie for Brad Pitt's character. He steals... I mean, you're right. Leonardo Dicaprio did a wonderful job, but at the end of the day, it was Brad Pitt's movie, man.
I love Brad Pitt. I've been a Brad Pitt fan since way back when. You know,
he just sold that whole stunt man badass thing, who's down on his luck, but
he was down to earth. He didn't walk around like I'm a badass. He just like when Bruce Lee was running his mouth. He just giggled at it, and then that turned into, well, you think you can do something about it? Well, actually I do.
Yeah. And Quentin likes to turn kind of, have you noticed he likes to turn Brad Pitt into a redneck?
Every single time.
Every time he uses it, I'm like,
and where is Brad Pitt from?
I don't know.
Is he California?
Probably.
Originally? But he plays a redneck really well.
Yeah. He played even more redneck in Glorious Bastards. Sometimes that accent he did was kind of annoying at a few times in the movie, but this one was a little bit
in
less.
the hills of Kentucky. That is exactly what they sound like.
Oh yeah,
that's exactly.
Is that where he was from?
That's where the character was from.
Okay.
Was the hills of Kentucky.
Yeah,
where they probably still skin people.
But Quentin likes to dress them down a little bit. Brad Pitt.
She's one of the most beautiful women in Hollywood right now.
Yeah, she is. If you think about it, Brad Pitt could have played the Rick Dalton character.
He could have.
They
could have easily flipped.
It could have easily flipped. I mean,
that's what made this work. Is they both kind of look alike.
Yeah, but Brad Pitt looks like a movie star. In fact, at one point in the movie, they says, you kind of look a little bit too good looking to be a stuntman.
Yeah, you're too pretty to be a stuntman.
So, but he sold that character. He sold it.
He did. So, would you say he rose to the top in this movie? Yeah, I would say.
I don't think it would have worked without Brad Pitt.
Yeah, definitely. I would say he rose. He's probably the best character.
But Leonardo Dicaprio was great, but Brad Pitt killed in this movie.
Brad Pitt was really the lead,
right?
And Leonardo was supporting lead.
Yeah. So what's your rating?
I want to be fair, but I'm gonna say 3.
That's what
3 out of 5.
I was thinking.
I'm gonna say 3 out of 5, and I'm taking 2 points away from it because it was too long.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of stuff that just didn't.
He should have cut about 30 minutes.
And had it not been for the last 20, 30 minutes of the movie, I would have probably give this a 1.
Yeah.
But he brought it full circle at the end, and that's what I'm used to seeing when I watch a Quentin Tarantino movie, is that level of unmitigated violence and action that he does so well. I mean, and it's repeated over and over again all the way back to Reservoir Dogs, where he knows how to make a violent scene where you're cheering for the violence.
Yeah.
You know? And
he set it up in every way possible. Just everything that happens in that last scene, he set up famously.
I think the reason that it was so long was because it was personal.
Yeah.
That he was paying homage to Hollywood of that era, and he wanted to do it in length.
Yeah. And that's sometimes that's a problem. Sometimes people complain that studios, when they get involved, they make directors cut a lot of stuff, but if you've ever seen a director's cut, usually they're horrible. I saw a director's cut of Amadeus. It was all the stuff they cut out of the theatrical run, they should have cut out. But directors get very indulgent. They don't want to cut a lot of stuff. And studios want a shorter film, and they usually right. Because
I mean,
what happens when you cut out a lot of stuff is that the experience becomes more intense because you only leave what's essential for the story.
right.
So that's why whenever you watch a director's cut, it's just usually it's very terrible. But that's about it. We need to wrap this thing up. We're coming to an hour.
Oh boy,
we're sitting here complaining about him meandering in his movies, and we're meandering.
Well, guys, thank you for coming by. If you've stuck around to this point, you're a true fan of the show. But we'll be back together, and Paul will continue putting stuff on the channel. So
subscribe. Please comment. We need more comments, people. Just tell us what you think. Even if you don't like us, tell us why you don't like us.
Yeah, I mean,
we can take it. No, we really can't.
We got thick skin.
I'll probably delete the comment. But do it anyway. And thank you for watching. We will see you when we see you.